She stood there trembling, her hands still holding the tray. Customers stared. The restaurant went silent. And from the corner booth came the words that froze everyone in place. "Please stop kicking me." A black waitress, a powerful CEO, and a single moment that exposed what happens when dignity meets power. But this story didn't end there, because when the video surfaced, one man, a self-made millionaire, decided to act. This is what happened next. The incident took place at a mid-range business restaurant in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon. The lunchtime rush had just begun. Waiters moved quickly between tables, balancing plates and glasses. Among them was Tanya Williams, a 29-year-old waitress known by regulars for her warmth and professionalism. She'd been working at the Brass Fork for almost 2 years, saving money to attend college and helping her mother with medical bills. That day, she was assigned to a corner booth occupied by 3 men in suits. They were loud, laughing about business and stock prices. One of them, however, stood out. He was older, in his mid-50s, confident with the air of someone used to getting attention. His name was Robert Hensley, the chief executive officer of a private equity firm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. From the moment Tanya approached their table, witnesses said something felt off. Hensley barely looked at her when ordering. He spoke over her, corrected her tone, and interrupted as if she wasn't there. At first, Tanya brushed it off. She had seen rude customers before, but as she served their drinks and placed the food, something else began to happen. Security footage, later verified by investigators, showed Hensley stretching his leg under the table. At first, he brushed against Tanya's leg lightly. Then, he did it again and again. Each time Tanya passed near the booth, he nudged her. Then, the nudges turned into deliberate kicks. At first, she thought it was an accident. Restaurants are crowded. Chairs shift. Legs move. But soon she realized the truth. The movements were intentional. She stepped back and whispered, "Please stop." He didn't. Finally, as the pressure increased, she said it louder, "Please stop kicking me." The room went quiet. Everyone heard it. The other 2 men at his table froze. One of them looked away, pretending to check his phone. The other shifted in his seat. Robert Hensley didn't apologize. He smirked, shrugged, and said she was overreacting. Tanya, visibly shaken, walked away. Her manager, Lisa Harper, noticed immediately and asked what happened. When Tanya explained, Lisa checked the nearest camera. The footage confirmed it, Hensley's foot extending toward Tanya several times. Lisa walked over to the table and told him to leave. He refused, saying, "I'm a paying customer. I'll leave when I'm done." At that moment, another diner, a woman sitting nearby, stood up and said, "You don't treat people like that." Within minutes, the restaurant's atmosphere changed. Several customers stood up. Someone started recording on their phone. Faced with growing attention, the CEO finally stood, muttered something under his breath, and walked out. His companions followed, leaving money on the table but no apology. Later that evening, the video appeared online. It showed Tanya confronting him, trembling but firm, as the room fell silent. By morning, the clip had millions of views. The headline read, "CEO accused of kicking waitress. Restaurant stands with employee." News stations picked it up. Social media exploded with outrage and debate. But while the world reacted, one man decided to do something real. His name was Marcus Reid, a self-made millionaire, entrepreneur, and community leader. Marcus had built one of Atlanta's most successful small business networks. He wasn't a celebrity, but he was respected for his philanthropy and his belief in fair treatment for workers. He saw the clip late at night while scrolling through his feed. The words, "Please stop kicking me," stayed in his mind. He watched the video twice, then again. And something in Tanya's face, the fear, the quiet strength, reminded him of his own mother, who had worked as a waitress for most of her life. The next morning, Marcus drove to the Brass Fork and asked to meet Tanya. She was hesitant, still overwhelmed by the attention. But when he shook her hand, he said, "Thank you for speaking up. What you did matters." Then, in front of the staff and a few customers, he announced that he would pay for her full education. He said, "No one working hard to serve others should ever be humiliated for it. Tanya, I want to give you a full scholarship for any business or management program you want to study. I'll cover it all." The restaurant applauded. Tanya cried. She said later, "I didn't know what to say. I didn't think anyone would care." Marcus didn't stop there. He publicly challenged other business owners to create cultures of respect. He started a program called the Service Dignity Fund, donating $250,000 to help hospitality workers facing harassment or abuse. The fund provided emergency grants, legal aid, and training for safer workplaces. Within days, the story shifted. New headlines read, "Millionaire steps in after CEO harasses waitress, turns outrage into action." It was no longer just about what went wrong, but what could be done right. Meanwhile, Robert Hensley, the CEO, faced intense backlash. His company's board held an emergency meeting. Within a week, he was placed on leave. Days later, he issued a statement saying, "I regret any discomfort caused by my actions, which were unintentional. I apologize to Ms. Williams and the restaurant staff." But the public wasn't convinced. The footage was clear. His actions weren't accidents. Clients pulled contracts. The company's stock briefly fell. By the end of the quarter, Robert Hensley resigned. Tanya chose not to file charges. She said she wanted peace, not revenge. In her words, "I just wanted respect." Across the country, people talked about the story, not just because it was shocking, but because it was familiar. Many workers could relate. Harassment in the service industry was common, especially against women and minorities. A study by the National Restaurant Association in 2022 found that over 70% of restaurant workers reported harassment from customers at least once a month. Most incidents went unreported. Few ever reached headlines. Tanya's story became a rare example of what happens when someone stands up and when others stand with them. Her courage started a conversation about how we treat people who serve us. It also raised questions about power and accountability. Why do some people feel entitled to mistreat those who serve them? What does it say about society when respect depends on status or uniform? And why does it take a viral video to make people care? Marcus Reid's response became a case study in responsible influence. He didn't post slogans or chase publicity. He acted. He used his wealth not to dominate, but to uplift. He reminded people that power can be used to heal, not just to harm. In the weeks that followed, several restaurants in Atlanta introduced new employee safety policies. They trained staff on how to respond to harassment and installed additional cameras for protection. Local organizations reported a rise in donations to service worker funds. Schools discussed Tanya's story and lessons about ethics and dignity. Tanya's life changed, too. She left the restaurant industry to focus on her studies, funded by Marcus's scholarship. She's now pursuing a degree in business management. Her dream is to open her own restaurant, one where, in her words, everyone is treated like a human being. Marcus Reid continues to expand the Service Dignity Fund. He says, "You can't fix every injustice, but you can always decide not to ignore one." At its heart, this story is not about a CEO, a waitress, or even a millionaire. It's about respect, the kind that should never depend on titles or income. It's about power and how we choose to use it. When Tanya said, "Please stop kicking me," she wasn't just speaking to one man. She was speaking to a culture that too often ignores quiet suffering. Her voice broke a silence many people know all too well. The story reminds us that cruelty can appear in the smallest actions, a nudge, a word, a look, but kindness can appear just as suddenly, and when it does, it changes everything. In the end, this wasn't just a viral video. It was a mirror. It reflected both the ugliness and the hope inside human nature. It showed that injustice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it kicks quietly beneath the table, and it showed that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply says, "Please stop." Tanya Williams found her voice in that moment. Marcus Reid used his influence to amplify it. And together, their story continues to remind people that dignity is not earned, it's owed. Because when power meets kindness, dignity wins. And sometimes, all it takes to start that change is one person refusing to stay silent.